The bell above the roadside diner rang like a gunshot. In the heartbeat of silence that followed, every head turned. It was 1989 in Whitewood, Arizona, where summer heat still punished the land even as September faded into October. The roadside diner stood as an oasis of neon and coffee on the forgotten stretch of highway that connected nowhere to nothing important. Outside, the sun hammered the cracked asphalt parking lot where 5 Harley-Davidsons gleamed like sentinels, their chrome catching fire in the dying light. Jack Sarge Blackwood didn't look up when the bell rang. 20 years of military service and another 4 leading the Iron Guardians Motorcycle Club had taught him to read trouble by sound alone. His weathered hands, mapped with scars that told more stories than he'd ever speak aloud, remained steady around his coffee mug. But his muscles tensed beneath his leather vest, a predator's instinct sharpening his senses. This wasn't the lazy jingle of a tired trucker. This wasn't the cheerful chime of a local. This was panic. A small figure darted past the counter, moving too quick and too low to be an adult. Jack tracked the movement from the corner of his eye, all sharp angles and desperate speed. The tiny shadow zigzagged between tables before disappearing beneath his booth. Jack felt small fingers grip his ankle. Then came a voice, barely a whisper, trembling up from below. "Please, don't tell him I'm here." Across the table, Marcus Doc Peterson stopped mid-bite of his burger. Thomas Hammer Wilson straightened in his seat. James Ghost Miller and Frank Beast Jackson shifted almost imperceptibly, their hands moving to rest near their waistbands. All 5 Iron Guardians went still, their laughter dying in the fluorescent-lit air. Jack slowly lowered his hand beneath the table, a small palm pressed against his, ice cold and shaking. "Easy now," he murmured, loud enough for his crew but soft enough not to carry. "Nobody's telling anybody nothing." That's when headlights swept across the diner windows. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, midnight black and polished to mirror shine, pulled into the parking lot with the aggressive precision of a predator cornering prey. The engine purred to silence. 3 seconds later, the door opened. Robert Harrison didn't walk into rooms. He claimed them. At 55, the founder and CEO of Horizon Tech stood tall and sharp-edged with silver temples, professionally styled even at this hour. His tailored suit probably cost more than what most people in this diner earned in 3 months. 2 men flanked him, their earpieces, visible hands resting near concealed weapons eyes, scanning the room with mechanical efficiency. The diner, which had been humming with late-night conversation, went quiet. "Good evening," Harrison said. His voice was smooth-cultured, the kind that commanded boardrooms and bent politicians to his will. His eyes swept the room like searchlights. "I'm looking for my daughter, 10 years old, dark hair, likely frightened. She ran away from our car a few miles back." The waitress behind the counter, her name tag read Betty, wiped her hands on her apron. "Haven't seen any kids tonight, mister." "Stepdaughter," Harrison corrected, pulling out his phone. He showed a photo to Betty, then to a couple in the corner booth. "Sophie, she's confused, not well. I need to get her home safely." Beneath the table, those tiny fingers squeezed Jack's hand tighter. Something cold settled in Jack's chest. He'd seen enough liars in his life to know one when he heard them. The words were right, but the tone was wrong. Too controlled, too rehearsed. No genuine worry, no real fear. Harrison's gaze swept toward the Iron Guardians table. Jack took a slow sip of his coffee, meeting those calculating eyes without flinching. Around him, his crew radiated the kind of calm that came before storms. Hammer cracked his knuckles. Doc leaned back, arms crossed over his Iron Guardian's vest. "You boys see a little girl come through here?" Harrison asked, stepping closer. The smell of expensive cologne couldn't quite mask something sharper beneath, the scent of anger. "Been here an hour," Jack said evenly. "Seen a lot of coffee, no kids." One of the bodyguards whispered something in Harrison's ear. The billionaire's jaw tightened. "She's sick," Harrison said, and now there was an edge beneath the polish. "She has a medical condition. Without her medication, she could..." "Could what?" Hammer interrupted, his voice a low rumble. "Drop dead right in front of us if she doesn't get her medication," Harrison said, eyes flashing dangerously. "I don't appreciate your tone," he continued, shoulders squaring. "And I don't appreciate suits rolling up on my dinner," Hammer shot back. Jack raised his hand slightly, silencing his friend. "If we see a lost kid, we'll call it in." That good enough. The air between them could have caught fire. Harrison studied Jack for a long moment, and Jack understood he was being measured. Weight, threat, usefulness. Whatever calculation Harrison was running, he must not have liked the odds. "I'll be at the Grand View Hotel," Harrison finally said, pulling a business card from his pocket and placing it on the table. The Horizon Tech logo gleamed in embossed silver. "When you find her, there's a $10,000 reward." He turned to leave, then paused. "And gentlemen, interfering with a parent's rights is a serious crime. I'd hate for this to become complicated." The threat hung in the air like smoke. When the Rolls-Royce's taillights finally disappeared down the highway, the diner released its held breath. Jack pushed back his chair carefully and looked down. Two brown eyes stared up at him from the shadows. Wide, terrified, but also sharp. Smart eyes. Eyes that had seen too much. "He's gone," Jack said quietly. The girl didn't move. "Come on out, little one. You're safe now." Slowly, like a fox leaving its den, she crawled out. Her jeans were torn at the knees, her pink backpack covered in dust. She couldn't have weighed more than 70 pounds, but when she stood, she didn't cry. She just looked at Jack with an unsettling calm. "Thank you for lying," she said. The Guardians exchanged glances. "Wasn't a lie," Doc said carefully. "We didn't see you come in. Sarge's boots were in the way." The smallest smile tugged at her lips, a smile far too knowing for a 10-year-old. "My name's Sophie," she said, "and my stepdad wants to kill me." She said it the way other kids might say they wanted ice cream. Matter of fact, simple, true. Then she reached into her backpack and pulled out something that made Jack's blood run cold. A thumb drive wrapped in a pink hair ribbon with a small note attached. In a child's handwriting, it read, "Mommy said if anything happens, give this to someone brave." Outside, thunder rolled across the desert. The storm was coming. But inside that roadside diner, looking at the little girl with her mother's last wish clutched in her hands, Jack Blackwood realized the real storm had already begun. Betty brought hot chocolate without being asked. Sophie wrapped both hands around the mug, but didn't drink. Her eyes never left Jack's face, studying him with an intensity that felt older than her years. "How long you been running?" Jack asked, sliding into the booth across from her. "Since the funeral." Sophie's voice was hollow. 3 days ago, Mommy's funeral." The Guardians pulled chairs closer, forming an unconscious protective circle. "I'm sorry about your mom," Jack said and meant it. Sophie nodded, staring into the chocolate. "She got sick fast. The doctor said it was her heart, but..." She paused, something dark flickering across her young face. "Robert smiled at the funeral. I saw him. When everyone was crying, he smiled." Hammer muttered a curse under his breath. "That's when I remembered what Mommy told me." Sophie reached for her backpack, pulling it onto her lap like a shield. "She said if anything bad ever happened to her, I should take this and run. Find someone who looks brave." "Your mom was Diana Lawson, wasn't she?" Doc asked suddenly. Sophie's head snapped up, surprise breaking through her careful composure. "You knew my mom?" "Not exactly," Doc said slowly. "But I knew of her. She was a data analyst at Horizon Tech. Brilliant woman." Jack shot Doc a questioning look. "Horizon Tech does government contracts," Doc explained, his voice dropping. "Medical systems, surveillance. I read about Diana Lawson. She was leading some big data project." "Mommy said they were doing bad things," Sophie whispered. "Things they weren't supposed to do." She was collecting proof. Jack's gaze dropped to the thumb drive still clutched in her small hand. "Can we see?" he asked gently. Sophie hesitated, then placed the drive on the table, her fingers lingering protectively over it. "Mommy said to be very careful who sees this." "Your mama was right about that," Jack said, "but we need to know what we're dealing with here." Beast stood up. "Got my laptop in the saddlebag. Be right back." Sophie watched him leave, then turned back to Jack. "Are you soldiers?" Jack exchanged looks with his men. "We were," he said, "long time ago." "I could tell," Sophie said. "Mommy said soldiers have a certain look in their eyes, like they've seen things most people haven't." Out of the mouths of babes, Jack thought. The kid was observant, just like her mother must have been. Beast returned with a battered laptop. The Guardians huddled around as he inserted the thumb drive. Folder after folder appeared, hundreds of documents, spreadsheets, and video files, all neatly organized and labeled. Doc whistled low. She was thorough. "Phoenix Protocol," Jack read from one of the folder names. "What's that?" Beast clicked on the folder. Inside were technical specifications, memos, and what looked like test results. Doc leaned in his brow, furrowing as he read. "Jesus Christ," he murmured. "They're developing some kind of mass surveillance system. Facial recognition, voice pattern, matching behavior, prediction algorithms." "Isn't that what the NSA already does?" Hammer asked. Doc shook his head. "Not like this. This is next level." They're talking about implantable chips, tracking systems disguised as vaccines, backdoors into every computer system in the country. And it's all off the books, Beast added, pointing to another document. No congressional oversight, no judicial review. Jack looked at Sophie, who was watching them with those two old eyes. Your mom found all this. She nodded. She said Robert was selling things to bad people, people who wanted to hurt America. The diner had emptied out. Only Betty remained, wiping down tables and pretending not to listen. Outside, the first fat raindrops began to hit the windows. We need to go, Jack said suddenly. This isn't the place for this conversation. Where can she go, Sarge? Ghost asked, speaking up for the first time. Harrison's got resources. He'll have police looking for her by morning. Jack considered their options. The weight of the decision pressed down on him like a physical thing. Taking in a runaway child, interfering with a custody situation. It crossed lines the Guardians had never crossed before. But leaving her? That wasn't an option either. She comes with us, he said finally. Back to the compound. Doc said carefully. You know what this means. Harrison is connected. Government contracts, political friends. We'll be going up against serious firepower. Jack looked at Sophie again. The girl was exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but she sat straight, shoulders back. Brave like her mother must have been. I've gone up against worse, Jack said quietly. The memory hit him suddenly vivid and unwelcome. Grenada, 1983. Operation Urgent Fury. The sound of gunfire, the smell of cordite, the weight of his dying friend in his arms. Tom Marshall bleeding out on foreign soil, making Jack promise to look after his family. A promise Jack had kept for years until cancer took Tom's wife and their son grew to manhood with no need for an honorary uncle anymore. Some promises you kept, some debts you paid, some lines you didn't cross. And sometimes life put a child in your path who needed protection, and all the complicated moral calculations simplified down to one clear imperative: you stood between that child and harm. No matter what. Jack made his decision. Gather up, he told his men. We roll in 5. The Guardians nodded, no further questions. They'd followed him through war. They'd follow him through this. As they prepared to leave, Betty approached their table, coffee pot in hand. But instead of offering refills, she placed a brown paper bag on the table. Sandwiches, she said, and some cookies. Girls gotta eat. Jack nodded his thanks. Betty leaned in closer. My sister's kid, she said quietly, got taken by her ex last year. Cops wouldn't do nothing because he had custody papers. Found her 3 weeks later. Wasn't the same girl anymore. Her eyes hardened. You do what you gotta do, soldier. Outside, the Guardians' motorcycles roared to life, 5 Harley-Davidsons forming a protective phalanx. Jack helped Sophie secure her backpack and lifted her onto his bike, a customized 1984 FXR. Hold tight, he told her, wrapping his leather jacket around her small frame. As they pulled away from the diner, the rain began to fall in earnest, drumming against their helmets, washing away the dust of the Arizona desert. Sophie's arms wrapped around Jack's waist, her grip fierce and desperate. Jack Blackwood had led men into battle. He'd faced down death more times than he could count, but nothing had prepared him for the weight of a child's trust, as fragile and as heavy as the thumb drive now secured in his inner pocket. The storm had arrived, and they were riding straight into it. The Iron Guardians compound sat 40 miles outside Whitewood, at the end of a dirt road that turned to mud beneath the pounding rain. 5 acres of desert scrubs surrounded a converted ranch house, a large garage, and several outbuildings, all enclosed by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. To the untrained eye, it looked like a junkyard. Old cars and motorcycle parts scattered strategically to create the impression of disarray. To Jack, it was the closest thing to a fortress they had. Headlights swept the main yard as the bikes rolled through the gate, which Ghost closed and locked behind them. The front door of the ranch house opened, spilling warm light into the rainy darkness. Martha Mama Thompson stood in the doorway, her 60-year-old frame straight as a ramrod, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She'd been a military wife for 30 years before becoming a military widow. Now she kept house for the Guardians, cooking meals and keeping a watchful eye on the emotional well-being of men who'd seen too much war. Her eyebrows rose as Jack approached with Sophie in tow. Jack Blackwood, she said, hands on her hips. What have you brought home now? Jack guided Sophie forward. Mama, this is Sophie Lawson. She needs a safe place to stay. Mama Thompson's expression softened as she took in Sophie's rain-soaked appearance. Child, you look half drowned and wholly exhausted. Come on in. Inside the ranch house was warm and surprisingly homey. Wooden floors, comfortable furniture walls decorated with military memorabilia, and framed photographs of men in uniform. A far cry from the outlaw biker den most people would imagine. Kitchen's got hot soup, Mama said, ushering Sophie toward the back of the house. And I'll find you some dry clothes. Might have to roll up the sleeves and pant legs, but they'll do. As Mama led Sophie away, Jack gathered his men in the living room, spreading the contents of Diana Lawson's thumb drive across a worn oak coffee table. We need to know what we're dealing with, he said. Doc Ghost, dig through these files. I want to know exactly what Harrison is hiding. Hammer Beast, secure the perimeter. Double the usual watches tonight. If Harrison has half the resources I think he does, we can't afford to be sloppy. The men nodded, breaking off to their assigned tasks. Jack remained in the living room staring at a photograph on the wall, his old Ranger unit standing proud in their uniforms, arms around each other's shoulders. Young, invincible, certain of their purpose. Grenada seemed a lifetime ago now, though the lessons remained. In the chaos of battle, objectives simplified: protect your men, complete the mission, get everyone home. But even then, sometimes the lines blurred. Like the village where they'd found civilians being held at gunpoint by local militia. Not their mission, not their fight, but they'd intervened anyway. Some choices transcended orders. Penny for your thoughts, Ranger. Mama's voice broke through his reverie as she returned to the living room. Just remembering simpler times, Jack said. Mama snorted. When were times ever simple for you? She had a point. Jack sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. How's the girl? Fed, bathed, and asleep in the spare room, Mama said. Poor thing was dead on her feet, but she wouldn't close her eyes until I promised someone would stand guard. Smart kid. Too smart for her age, Mama agreed. Reminds me of you back when they first brought you home from Nam, old eyes and a young face. Jack didn't correct her assumption about his service. Mama tended to lump all conflicts together, and it didn't matter much anyway. War was war, no matter where you fought it. Harrison will come looking, he said instead. Let him try, Mama said, steel in her voice. This house has weathered worse storms than some fancy businessman with delusions of grandeur. In the early hours of the morning, Jack sat alone at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee cooling beside him. Diana Lawson's files spread out before him. Doc and Ghost had done good work organizing the information into something comprehensible, even to someone without technical expertise. The Phoenix Protocol, as Diana had documented it, was ostensibly a national security project, a next-generation surveillance system designed to identify and track potential threats to American interests. On the surface, it appeared legitimate if ethically questionable. But Diana had uncovered something darker. Horizon Tech had been developing a parallel version of the technology with key components removed: the safeguards, the oversight mechanisms, the kill switches. This shadow version was being packaged for sale to the highest bidders: foreign governments, private military contractors, even criminal organizations. Worse, the system had already been tested on unwitting American citizens. Thousands of them tracked and monitored without consent, their most private data harvested and analyzed. If these allegations were true, Harrison wasn't just a corrupt businessman, he was a traitor. The floor creaked. Jack looked up to find Sophie standing in the doorway, her small frame swallowed by one of Mama's old t-shirts repurposed as a nightgown. Can't sleep, he asked. She shook her head, padding barefoot into the kitchen. I had a bad dream. Jack pushed out a chair for her. Want to talk about it? Sophie climbed onto the chair, feet dangling above the floor. I dreamed about Mommy. She was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't hear her. Jack nodded. Nightmares were familiar territory for everyone under this roof. Your mom was a brave woman, he said. She was scared, Sophie replied, looking down at her hands. All the time at the end. But she still did what she thought was right. That's what courage is, Jack said. Being scared, but doing the right thing anyway. Sophie considered this, then looked up at the papers spread across the table. Are you going to stop Robert? A loaded question from such a young source. Jack chose his words carefully. We're going to try, he said, but first we need to understand exactly what we're up against. He's a monster, Sophie said simply. He pretends to be nice, but he's not. He hurts people. Did he hurt you? Jack asked, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice. Sophie shook her head. Not me, but I heard him yelling at Mommy, and once I saw bruises on her arm. Her voice dropped to a whisper. After she died, he went through all her things. He was looking for that. She pointed at the thumb drive. Mommy hid it inside my teddy bear. She said only I would know where to find it. Smart woman Diana Lawson, entrusting her most valuable secret to the person Harrison would least suspect. How did you get away from him? Jack asked. We were driving to his house in Phoenix, Sophie said. He stopped at a gas station. I unlocked the door and ran. I knew Mommy's friend lived nearby, but when I got to her house, there were police cars outside. Her eyes filled with tears. I think Robert did something to her, too. Jack felt a cold certainty settling in his gut. Harrison was tying up loose ends, eliminating anyone who might have known about Diana's discovery, and Sophie, with her backpack and thumb drive, was the loosest end of all. You're safe here, Jack assured her. We won't let him find you. Sophie looked around the kitchen, taking in the worn cabinets, the faded curtains, the mismatched chairs. Is this your home? One of them, Jack said. The other one's the road. Do you have a family? These men are my family, Jack said. We've been through hell together. That bonds people stronger than blood sometimes. Sophie nodded, seeming to accept this. Like me and Mommy, it was just us for a long time before Robert. We were a good team. Sounds like it, Jack said, feeling an unexpected tightness in his throat. She would have liked you, Sophie said, with the certainty only a child could muster. She always said the best people are the ones who stand up when everyone else sits down. From the mouth of babes, Jack thought again. Dawn was breaking when Doc burst into the kitchen, his face grim. You need to see this, he said, tossing a newspaper onto the table. The Arizona Republic's headline jumped out in bold type, Tech billionaire's daughter missing feared kidnapped. Beneath was a school photo of Sophie alongside a picture of Harrison, looking appropriately distraught. Jack scanned the article. Harrison was offering a $50,000 reward for information. He told police that Sophie had been struggling since her mother's death, possibly confused, potentially in danger. He'd suggested she might have been targeted by an outlaw motorcycle gang seen in the area. He's getting ahead of the story, Ghost said, appearing in the doorway, controlling the narrative. It gets worse, Doc said, turning on the small television in the corner. He's been on 3 news channels already this morning. The screen flickered to life, showing Harrison at a press conference, his expression a masterclass in controlled grief. My stepdaughter Sophie is all I have left of her beautiful mother, he was saying, voice catching at just the right moment. To whoever has taken her, please, she needs her medication. She's a child who's already lost so much. Don't make her suffer more. Sophie stared at the screen, her face a mask of disbelief. He's lying. I don't take any medicine. Of course he's lying, Hammer growled, joining them in the kitchen. Sets up a nice excuse if you turn up dead, doesn't it? Heart condition just like your mom. Sophie's eyes widened at the implication. Jack shot Hammer a warning look. Too blunt for a child's ears, even one as perceptive as Sophie. We need to get ahead of this, Jack said. Ghost, reach out to your contacts. Find out what the police actually know versus what Harrison is feeding them. Ghost nodded. As a former military intelligence specialist, he maintained connections in law enforcement. Cops who'd served who understood that sometimes the law and justice were different things. Doc Beast, I want everything we can find on Harrison. Business dealings, political connections, known associates. Dig deep. What about me? Hammer asked. You and I are going to secure transport, Jack said. If things go sideways, we need a way to move Sophie that doesn't involve motorcycles. Jack turned to Sophie, who was still staring at the television, watching her stepfather lie to the world about her. Is there anyone else who knew what your mom was doing? He asked. Anyone she might have trusted with information? Sophie thought for a moment, then nodded. Uncle Mike. He's not really my uncle, but he was Mommy's friend from college. They used to talk a lot, and she would send him letters sometimes. Mike who? Jack pressed. Turner. Mike Turner. He works for the newspaper, Sophie said. Mommy said if anything happened to her, I could trust Uncle Mike. Doc and Ghost exchanged looks. Mike Turner, the investigative reporter. You know him, Jack asked. Know of him, Doc said. He broke that story last year about defense contractors in Iraq. Won some big journalism prize. A potential ally then. Someone with the platform and credibility to expose Harrison's crimes. But approaching him would be risky. Harrison would likely have Turner under surveillance if Diana had been in contact with him. Go see if you can make contact without exposing our location, Jack decided. Feel him out first. Make sure he's not in Harrison's pocket. As the Guardians dispersed to their tasks, Jack found himself alone with Sophie again. The girl looked smaller in the daylight, fragile beneath the 2 large borrowed clothes. But her eyes remained sharp, watchful, taking in everything. What happens now? She asked. Jack wished he had a simple answer, the kind of reassurance adults were supposed to offer children. Instead, he gave her the truth. Now we fight, he said. Smart and careful. We find allies, we gather evidence, and we make sure your mom's discovery doesn't disappear. Sophie nodded, accepting this adult response with the gravity of someone who'd left childhood behind too soon. Can I help, she asked. Jack considered her for a moment. In his experience, giving people purpose helped them cope with fear. Even children. Yes, he decided. You can help me understand your mom's work, and you can tell me everything you know about Robert Harrison. The more we know, the better our chances. Sophie straightened in her chair, shoulders setting with new purpose. In that moment, Jack could see the woman she might become if she survived the storm they were now facing. As the morning progressed, the compound settled into a tense but organized rhythm. Mama Thompson took Sophie under her wing, keeping the girl busy with small tasks while maintaining a watchful eye on the perimeter. The guardians came and went, gathering information, securing supplies, preparing for whatever might come. Jack found himself in the garage working with Hammer to prepare a 1977 Chevy van, nondescript, reliable, and more importantly, with heavily tinted windows in a hidden compartment originally designed for transporting motorcycle parts across state lines. You know Harrison's not gonna let this go, Hammer said, voice low, as he checked the van's transmission. Guy like that, with his resources, he'll burn the world to keep his secrets. Jack nodded, tightening a bolt with more force than necessary. Wouldn't be the first time we've faced bad odds. No, Hammer agreed, but it's the first time we've had a kid in the mix. The unspoken question hung between them. Jack understood the concern. The Guardians had built their brotherhood around a simple principle: they fought their own battles. They didn't bring civilians into their wars, especially not children. But this was different. Sophie had brought her war to them, not the other way around, and there was no walking away from it now. She's seen too much already, Jack said finally. Her innocence was gone long before we met her. Doesn't mean we can't try to save what's left, Hammer replied. Before Jack could respond, Ghost appeared in the garage doorway, his expression tense. We've got trouble, he said. My contact at the sheriff's department just called. Harrison's filed kidnapping charges. They're sending deputies to search known biker hangouts. It's just a matter of time before they connect the dots to us. Jack wiped his hands on a rag mind, racing through possibilities. How much time do we have? Hours, not days, Ghost said. And there's more. Harrison's got private security making inquiries all over town. They're offering cash for information. 10 grand, no questions asked. In a county where the median income barely cleared $30,000 a year, that kind of money would turn heads, would loosen tongues. Doc, Jack called out. Where are we with Turner? Doc emerged from the house phone in hand. Left messages through 3 different channels, waiting to hear back. Jack made his decision. We accelerate the plan. Ghost, Hammer, get the van ready. Beast, prepare a go bag for Sophie. Essentials only. Doc, keep trying Turner. If Harrison's moving this fast, he's scared. That means Diana's evidence is even more damaging than we thought. As the Guardians moved with practiced efficiency, Jack headed back to the house to find Sophie. He discovered her in the living room with Mama Thompson learning how to play checkers on a battered old board. Jumps again, Sophie said triumphantly, capturing another of Mama's pieces. You're a natural strategist, Mama said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd heard the news then. Jack cleared his throat. Sophie, can we talk for a minute? The girl looked up instantly, alert to the change in tone. She nodded, sliding off her chair to follow Jack to the kitchen. Something's wrong, she said. It wasn't a question. Harrison's pushing harder than we expected, Jack said, keeping his voice steady. We might need to move you somewhere else, soon. Fear flashed across Sophie's face, quickly replaced by determination. He found us. Not yet, Jack assured her. But we need to stay ahead of him. I promised you'd be safe, and I keep my promises. Sophie studied him, seeming to weigh his words, judge his resolve. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded. Where will we go, she asked. Somewhere Harrison won't look, Jack said. I have friends, other veterans, who can help us. But we need to be ready to move quickly. Sophie glanced toward the window where her backpack sat on a chair. I'm already packed. I never really unpacked. The simple statement hit Jack like a physical blow. How many times had this child been uprooted? How many safe places had proven temporary? Sophie, he said, kneeling to meet her eye to eye, I want you to understand something. No matter what happens, no matter where we go, you're not alone in this anymore. The Guardians protect their own. And right now, that includes you. Sophie's expression remained serious, but her eyes brightened with something that might have been hope. Because of Mommy's thumb drive, she asked. No, Jack said firmly. Because you crawled under my table and trusted me to help you. That matters more than any evidence. A small hand reached out, touching the Iron Guardian's patch on Jack's vest. Mommy was right. She said brave people find each other even in the darkest times. Jack was saved from responding by Doc's sudden appearance. Turner called back, he said urgently. He wants to meet. Says he has information about Diana that could blow this whole thing wide open. Hope flickered, fragile but real. If Turner had additional evidence combined with Diana's files, they might have enough to bring Harrison down legally. The safest possible outcome for Sophie. Where and when? Jack asked. Blue Moon Cafe, 20 miles south, 1 hour. Jack checked his watch. Might be cutting it close with the police search. It's our best shot, Doc said. And Turner was specific. He'll only meet with whoever has Sophie. Says he needs to verify she's safe before he'll share what he knows. A reasonable precaution or a trap, Jack weighed the possibilities. Turner's reputation suggested the former, but with Harrison's resources in play, no one could be fully trusted. I'll go, Jack decided. Alone, the rest of you prepare for extraction in case things go south. Not alone, Ghost countered. I'll take a position across from the cafe, give you cover if needed. Jack nodded his acceptance. Ghost was the best shot among them and the most invisible when he needed to be, hence the nickname. What about Sophie? Doc asked. All eyes turned to the girl who stood straighter under their gaze. She stays here, Jack said firmly. Too risky to move her before we know what Turner has. Sophie's expression fell. But I want to see Uncle Mike. He'll know it's really me. Jack considered this. She had a point. Turner might be more forthcoming if he saw Sophie in person, knew she was unharmed. But the risk? Compromise, Doc suggested. Video call. Turner can see her, confirm she's safe, but Sophie stays here with us. Jack nodded. Make it happen. As the Guardians prepared for the meeting, Jack took Sophie aside once more. I need you to be brave a little longer, he told her. Stay with Mama. Do exactly what she says. If anything happens, anything at all, she knows what to do to keep you safe. Sophie nodded solemnly. Will you come back? Wild horses couldn't keep me away, Jack promised. As Ghost and Jack prepared to depart, Doc pulled Jack aside, pressing a small pistol into his hand. A compact .38 special. Reliable, concealable, deadly at close range. Just in case, Doc said quietly. Jack tucked the weapon into his jacket. Hold down the fort. If we're not back in 2 hours, we won't be here when you get back, Doc finished. The emergency protocol established years ago. Scatter, regroup at the secondary location, leave no trail. Jack nodded, clasping Doc's shoulder briefly before heading to his bike. As the two Guardians rode away from the compound, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that the operation was moving too fast, spiraling beyond their control. In combat, that sensation usually preceded disaster. But sometimes moving forward was the only option, even straight into the storm. The Blue Moon Cafe sat just off the highway, a chrome and neon relic from a more optimistic era. Mid-afternoon sun glinted off the windows, making it impossible to see inside from the parking lot. Not ideal from a tactical perspective. Ghost peeled off half a mile before they arrived, taking a circuitous route to his observation position. Jack continued alone, parking his Harley at the far end of the lot where he could monitor approaching vehicles. The cafe was half full, mostly truckers and locals. Jack chose a booth near the back, positioned to watch both the front door and the kitchen exit. Old habits. Mike Turner arrived precisely on time, recognizable from his newspaper photos. Mid-40s trim, built the perpetually alert expression of a man who asked uncomfortable questions for a living. He spotted Jack immediately, making a beeline for the booth. Blackwood, he asked, sliding into the seat opposite. Jack nodded. Turner. The reporter's eyes flicked to Jack's Iron Guardian's vest. Not exactly traveling incognito. Hiding in plain sight, Jack replied. Easier than you'd think. Turner placed a manila folder on the table, keeping his hand firmly on top of it. Where's Sophie? Safe, Jack said. Doc's setting up a video call. You'll see her in a few minutes. Turner studied Jack's face, searching for something. Trust, perhaps, or deception. Diana was my friend, he said finally. We met in journalism school before she switched to computer science. Stayed in touch over the years. She mentioned you to Sophie, Jack acknowledged. Said you could be trusted. Some of the tension left Turner's shoulders. She contacted me 3 weeks ago. Said she discovered something at Horizon that scared her. We arranged to meet, but she never showed. Next thing I hear, she's dead of a sudden heart attack. His mouth twisted bitterly. Convenient. Jack's phone buzzed. Doc had set up the call. He turned the screen to show Turner. Sophie's face appeared slightly pixelated but unmistakable. Uncle Mike, she exclaimed, genuine relief in her voice. Turner's professional composure cracked. Sophie, thank God. Are you all right? Are they treating you well? I'm okay, Sophie assured him. They're helping me. They believe me about Robert. Turner's expression hardened. I believe you too, kiddo. Your mom sent me some things before she died. Things that point to exactly what kind of man Harrison is. Jack felt a surge of hope. What kind of things? Turner slid the folder across the table. Emails, meeting transcripts, financial records. Harrison's been selling Phoenix Protocol to some very bad people, including technical specifications that could compromise us national security. Jack opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. They aligned perfectly with Diana's evidence, filling in gaps, providing external verification. This is enough to bury him, Jack said. Almost, Turner agreed. But there's a piece missing. The actual code, the back-end access that proves Horizon created the backdoors deliberately. Diana said she'd found it, but she never got it to me. The thumb drive, Jack realized. Sophie had the final piece, the smoking gun that would turn circumstantial evidence into an ironclad case. Turner nodded. With that plus what I have, we could take this to the FBI, bypass local authorities who might be in Harrison's pocket. Jack was about to respond when his phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Ghost. Police cars 2 blocks away, moving fast. Jack's instincts flared. We need to go. Now. Turner looked alarmed. What's happening? Law enforcement, Jack said, already rising. Could be coincidence, could be Harrison. Either way, we're not sticking around to find out. Turner gathered his documents. My car's out back. Too risky, Jack countered. They'll be looking for it. You come with me. As they moved toward the exit, Jack's phone buzzed once more. The message from Ghost froze his blood. Not cops, armed men, tactical gear, Harrison's private security. Jack's hand moved to the concealed .38. Change of plans. Kitchen exit, now. They changed direction, pushing through the swinging doors into the kitchen. The startled cook barely had time to protest before they were moving past him, heading for the service door. Jack eased it open a crack, scanning the back lot. Clear for the moment, he gestured Turner through, following close behind. They'd made it halfway to Jack's Harley when the first shots rang out. Instinctively, Jack shoved Turner down behind a dumpster, drawing his pistol in one fluid motion. 3 men in tactical gear were advancing across the parking lot, weapons raised. Not police, no identifying markings, no verbal warnings. Just cold professional violence. Ghost's rifle cracked from his hidden position, dropping the lead gunman. The others scattered, taking cover behind vehicles. We're pinned, Turner gasped, pressed against the dumpster. What do we do? Jack assessed their options. Grim calculus running through his mind. They were outgunned, outmanned, with limited cover between their position and his motorcycle. But they had one advantage, Ghost providing precision fire from his elevated position. And they had something Harrison wanted desperately. The connection between Diana's evidence and Turner's journalism. Jack made his decision. When I start firing, you run for my bike. Keys are in the ignition. Ghost will cover you. What about you? Turner demanded. I'll be right behind you, Jack said, knowing it might be a lie. Someone has to keep their heads down. Before Turner could protest further, Jack leaned out from cover and fired 3 rapid shots, forcing Harrison's men to duck. Now go! Turner sprinted across the open ground. Jack provided covering fire, counting shots, aware of his limited ammunition. Ghost's rifle thundered methodically, keeping the attackers at bay. Turner reached the Harley, fumbling with the ignition. The bike roared to life. Jack prepared to make his own run when a new sound cut through the chaos. Police sirens closing fast. Real ones this time. Harrison's men heard it too. They retreated, pulling their wounded comrade into a black SUV that screeched away just as Turner gunned the Harley toward the highway. Jack remained hidden as police cars converged on the cafe, officers pouring out with weapons drawn. Responding to reports of gunfire, no doubt. He watched as Ghost melted away from his position, vanishing with the practiced invisibility of a man who'd spent years behind enemy lines. The mission parameters had changed. Turner had escaped with Diana's evidence, and Sophie remained secure at the compound. But Jack was now separated from both, with police securing the area and Harrison's men still hunting. The storm had broken, and the real battle was just beginning. The morning sun found Jack Blackwood walking alone on the shoulder of Route 17, thumb out like some teenage runaway. His Iron Guardian's cut had been stuffed into his backpack, replaced by a faded denim jacket he'd taken from an unattended clothesline. 20 miles separated him from the Blue Moon Cafe and the firefight that had scattered his carefully laid plans. The first vehicle to stop was a rusted Ford pickup, driven by an old rancher with skin like tan leather and eyes that had seen enough of the world not to ask questions. Jack climbed in without a word. "Where you headed?" the old man asked, shifting gears with arthritic fingers. "Whitewood," Jack replied, "or anywhere near it." The rancher nodded as if this explained everything. They drove in silence for 10 miles before the old man spoke again. "Saw the news this morning. Some rich fella's kid got kidnapped by bikers." He glanced sidelong at Jack. "Funny thing is, my nephew rides with the Desert Wolves out of Phoenix. Says the story don't add up." Jack kept his face neutral, watching the scrubland roll past. "That's so?" "Yep. Says the rich fella's wife died under strange circumstances. Says sometimes what looks like a kidnapping ain't one at all." Jack turned to study the old man. "Sounds like your nephew's got interesting friends." The rancher smiled, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Marines, class of '68, we tend to recognize our own." He tapped a faded tattoo on his forearm, an eagle globe and anchor weathered by decades of desert sun. "Army Rangers," Jack said after a moment. "Grenada." The old man nodded. "Figured as much. You got that look." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. "Got a cousin who owns a garage in Whitewood, third building past the gas station. Bay 4's got a Chevy Impala that ain't being used. Registration's in the glove box. Return it when you're done or don't. Makes no difference to me." Jack took the keys, suddenly understanding. The veteran network. Invisible to civilians but always present, always watching, always ready to help one of their own. "I owe you," Jack said simply. The rancher shook his head. "You owe that kid you're helping. World's got enough wolves, needs more sheepdogs." 2 hours later, Jack pulled the Impala onto a dirt road 20 miles east of the Iron Guardians compound. The emergency protocol dictated separation, different routes. Radio silence except for predetermined check-ins. If Harrison's men had found the compound, his brothers would have scattered, taking Sophie to the fallback location, an old hunting cabin owned by Beast's uncle in the Superstition Mountains. Jack ditched the Impala a mile from the cabin, continuing on foot through terrain that seemed designed by nature to break ankles and shred skin. He moved carefully, using the skills that had kept him alive in combat zones across 3 continents. The cabin appeared deserted at first glance. No vehicles, no smoke from the chimney despite the autumn chill. But Jack knew better. He whistled a specific pattern, 2 short and 1 long, then waited. Beast emerged from behind a stand of juniper rifle held low but ready. His massive frame relaxed slightly at the sight of Jack. "Took your time, Sarge," he said, relief evident beneath the gruff exterior. "Had to take the scenic road." Jack clasped Beast's shoulder. "Everyone make it." Beast nodded. "All accounted for. Girls inside with Mama and Doc. Hammer and Ghost are running perimeter. Harrison's men. No sign yet, but Ghost picked up police chatter. They found the compound about an hour after we cleared out. Place is crawling with caifs and men in suits who ain't cops." Jack processed this. "And Turner? Made contact. He's gone to ground with the evidence. Says he's got a secure location where he can compile everything. Wants to meet tomorrow to combine what he has with what's on the thumb drive." Jack nodded, following Beast toward the cabin. The structure was small but defensible. Stone foundation, thick log walls, single access road with clear lines of sight in all directions. The kind of place where a man could make a stand if he had to. Inside, Sophie sat at a scarred wooden table, a mug of hot chocolate cradled in her small hands. Her eyes lit up when Jack entered, relief washing over her face. "You came back," she said, as if this fact still surprised her. "Told you I would," Jack replied, setting down his pack. Mama Thompson emerged from the kitchenette. "About time you showed up. Girl's been fretting herself sick." "Had some complications," Jack said, accepting the coffee Mama handed him. "Harrison's men showed up at the meet." Doc looked up from his laptop. "We heard. Turner called. Said there was shooting." Jack nodded. "Ghost took one down. Rest scattered when the real police showed. Turner got away with the evidence." "And Harrison?" Doc asked. "Going nuclear. Beast says the compound's been compromised." Doc nodded grimly. "TV's been running the story all day. Dangerous biker gang kidnaps grieving stepfather's daughter. They've got your name, Jack. Military record, everything. Harrison's painting you as some kind of unstable vet with a grudge against authority figures." Jack absorbed this without visible reaction, though inside he felt a cold anger building. Harrison was using the oldest trick in the book, controlling the narrative, turning the hunters into the hunted. "What about the Phoenix Protocol?" he asked. "Any of that made it to the news?" Doc shook his head. "Not a whisper. Harrison's keeping that part buried deep. Jack turned to Sophie, who had been watching this exchange with those two old eyes. You holding up okay, kiddo? She nodded. Mama taught me how to play poker. I won 3 matches. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. She says I've got a natural poker face. That you do, Jack agreed, feeling a swell of pride for this resilient child. We need to talk about next steps. You up for that? Sophie straightened in her chair. I'm not a baby. I can handle it. Jack pulled up a chair across from her. Turner's got your mom's evidence. Combined with what's on the thumb drive, we might have enough to bring Harrison down legally. But we need to get it to the right people. People Harrison can't bribe or threaten. Like who? Sophie asked. FBI has a public corruption unit, Doc interjected. Specialized agents who handle cases involving government officials and contractors. Turner thinks he can get us a meeting with them, but it has to be in person. They need to see Sophie hear her testimony. Jack watched Sophie's reaction carefully. Asking a child to testify against a powerful man who wanted her silenced was a heavy burden. But the alternative, keeping her on the run indefinitely, wasn't sustainable either. What do you think, Sophie? Jack asked. You up for telling your story to some federal agents? Sophie was quiet for a long moment, staring into her hot chocolate as if it held answers. Will they believe me? Grown-ups usually believe other grown-ups, not kids. A valid concern. One Jack had considered himself. That's why we need the evidence, he explained. Your mom's files Turner's research. Together they back up everything you say, make it impossible to ignore. Sophie nodded slowly. If it means Robert can't hurt anyone else, I'll do it. Her small fingers clenched around her mug. I want him to pay for what he did to Mommy. The determination in her voice sent a chill through Jack. Vengeance was a dangerous fire, especially in one so young. He'd seen it consume grown men, turn them into hollow shells of who they once were. Justice, Jack corrected gently. Not vengeance. There's a difference. Sophie looked up, meeting his gaze. What's the difference? Vengeance is personal. It burns hot and leaves nothing but ashes. Justice is about setting things right, not just for you, but for everyone. It's harder, takes longer, but it builds something instead of destroying it. Sophie considered this, her brow furrowed in concentration. Mommy always said that doing the right thing is usually harder than doing the easy thing. Your mom was a wise woman, Jack said, feeling that unexpected tightness in his throat again. Ghost to base. The radio on Doc's hip crackled. We've got movement on the access road. Single vehicle. Approaching slow. Jack was on his feet instantly. Hammer beast, defensive positions. Doc gets Sophie and Mama to the cellar. The small cabin erupted into controlled motion, each guardian moving with practiced efficiency. Jack grabbed his pistol and headed for the front window, taking position where he could observe without being seen. A blue Ford Bronco was making its way up the rough track, dust billowing behind it. It stopped 100 yards from the cabin, just at the edge of the clearing. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out, hands held clearly away from his body. Mike Turner. Jack felt a surge of relief tinged with wariness. They hadn't expected Turner until tomorrow, and he'd arrived alone without calling ahead. Either very brave or very foolish. It's Turner, Jack called to the others, coming in alone. Hammer appeared at his shoulder. Could be a trap. Harrison might have got to him. A legitimate concern. Jack studied the reporter through narrowed eyes, looking for signs of coercion. But Turner's posture spoke of urgency rather than fear. Ghost, stay on overwatch. Beast with me. Hammer back door. We talked to him outside, away from Sophie. Jack stepped onto the cabin's small porch, Beast's solid presence at his back. Turner approached slowly, hands still visible. Didn't expect you so soon, Jack called when Turner was within earshot. Didn't have a choice, Turner replied, stopping a respectful distance away. Harrison's moving faster than we thought. He's called in favors at the Department of Justice. They're preparing to issue federal warrants for all of you. Kidnapping, assault, conspiracy. Serious charges with serious time. Jack's jaw tightened. On what grounds? He's got witnesses placing you at the diner the night Sophie disappeared. Waitress suddenly remembers seeing you force her onto your motorcycle. Plus fabricated evidence of threatening communications between you and Harrison in the weeks before Diana's death. That's bullshit, Beast growled. We never had any contact with Harrison before the diner. Doesn't matter, Turner said grimly. Harrison's got friends in high places and he's calling in every chip. Local police have been sidelined. This is federal now. They'll have roadblocks on every major highway by morning. Jack processed this. The situation was deteriorating faster than he'd anticipated. Harrison was bringing the full weight of his influence to bear, turning the machinery of justice against them. "What about the evidence?" Jack asked. "Your research Diana's files. I've got it all compiled, backed up in 3 separate locations," Turner said. "But we need to move now. I've got a contact at the Phoenix field office, agent who worked the cartels with me on a story last year. She's willing to meet us tonight off the books. Hear us out before the warrants drop." Jack exchanged looks with Beast. A federal agent willing to meet secretly was either their salvation or walking into a trap. "Why the rush?" Beast asked. "Why not wait for the official channels?" Turner's expression darkened. "Because Harrison just got appointed to a special advisory position with the National Security Council. Emergency appointment, no congressional oversight. By this time tomorrow, he'll have access to resources that make local law enforcement look like hall monitors. We move now, or Sophie disappears forever." The pieces clicked into place. The Phoenix Protocol wasn't just a rogue surveillance project. It was Harrison's audition for the big leagues. A demonstration of capabilities that had earned him entry to the inner sanctum of American power. From there, he could bury the evidence, silence witnesses, rewrite history itself. Jack made his decision. "We'll need 10 minutes. Where's this meeting?" "Abandoned airfield outside Chandler. My contact will be there at midnight." Jack nodded. "We'll follow you in the truck. Stay on the main roads, keep it legal. Last thing we need is getting pulled over for a busted taillight." As Turner returned to his Bronco, Jack headed back inside. The others had heard enough through the open window to understand the situation. "I don't like it," Hammer said bluntly. "Feels rushed, messy." "It is," Jack agreed. "But we're running out of options." Harrison's raised the stakes. "Could be walking into an ambush," Ghost pointed out. "Turner could have flipped." Jack considered this. Possible, but unlikely. Harrison would have sent a tactical team, not Turner alone. This feels genuine. "What if it is genuine, but this federal agent isn't?" Doc asked. "What if she's on Harrison's payroll?" Valid concerns, all of them. Jack had been asking himself the same questions. But the walls were closing in, and sometimes the only way out was through. "We take precautions," Jack decided. "Advanced scout fallback positions, extraction plan. Ghost, you'll shadow us in the Impala, maintain overwatch at the airfield. If anything feels wrong, we abort split-up rendezvous at emergency location Alpha." The Guardians nodded, accepting the plan, despite their reservations. Trust had kept them alive through worse situations. Jack turned to Sophie, who had emerged from the cellar with Mama. "Things are moving fast, kiddo. We need to go see that federal agent tonight." Sophie nodded, her face solemn. "Is it dangerous?" Jack considered lying, offering the kind of false reassurance adults typically gave children. But Sophie had earned more than that. "Could be," he admitted, "but we'll be careful. And sometimes the most dangerous thing is doing nothing." Sophie absorbed this, then walked to where her backpack sat by the door. "I'm ready." Jack felt that now familiar mixture of pride and heartache. No child should have to be this brave, this prepared for danger. But Sophie Lawson had been thrust into a world where childhood was a luxury she could no longer afford. As they prepared to depart, Jack pulled Doc aside. "If this goes sideways, get Sophie out, no matter what happens to me or the others. Get her somewhere safe, then get the evidence to someone who can use it." Doc studied his old friend's face. "You think Harrison's going to be waiting for us?" Jack checked his pistol, ensuring a round was chambered. "I think Harrison's a cornered animal, and cornered animals are unpredictable." "We've faced worse odds," Doc reminded him. Jack nodded, though privately he wasn't so sure. In their military days, they'd faced enemies who wanted to kill them. Harrison wanted to destroy them, their reputations, their freedom, their very existence in the world. Different kind of enemy, different kind of danger. "One more thing," Jack said, lowering his voice. "If I don't make it, make sure Sophie knows." He paused, struggling to articulate the complex emotions he'd developed for this child who'd crashed into his life just days ago. "Make sure she knows it mattered, that she mattered." Doc clasped his shoulder. "She knows, Jack. We all do." 30 minutes later, they were on the road. Beast driving their borrowed truck, Doc riding shotgun, Jack in the back with Sophie and Mama Thompson. Turner's Bronco led the way, maintaining a steady pace 5 car lengths ahead. Ghost had departed earlier, taking a parallel route in the Impala. Sophie sat quietly beside Jack, her backpack clutched on her lap. The thumb drive, that small piece of plastic that had set this whole storm in motion, secure inside. In the dim light of the truck's cabin, she looked impossibly small, possibly vulnerable. Scared, Jack asked softly so only she could hear. Sophie nodded, honest in a way only children can be. A little, but it's okay to be scared, right, as long as you do the right thing anyway. Jack smiled despite himself. That's exactly right. What if the FBI agent doesn't believe us? Sophie asked, giving voice to the fear that had clearly been weighing on her. Then we try someone else, Jack said firmly. We keep trying until someone listens. Your mom didn't give up, and neither will we. Sophie seemed to take comfort in this. She leaned slightly against Jack's arm, a small gesture of trust that hit him harder than any physical blow. The instinct to protect her was primal, overwhelming, not just because she was a child in danger, but because she was Sophie. Brave, resilient Sophie who'd crawled under his table and changed everything. The desert night sped past the windows, stars brilliant in the clear sky. They were heading back towards civilization, toward Phoenix with its lights and people in danger. Leaving the wilderness that had sheltered them, however briefly. Jack checked his watch. 11:15 p.m., 45 minutes until the meeting. His combat instincts hummed beneath his skin, that familiar tension before an operation. Except this time the stakes felt infinitely higher. This wasn't about completing a mission or even saving lives in the abstract. This was about one life, one child, and what kind of world she would inherit when the dust settled. Almost there, Beast called from the driver's seat. Chandler city limits, coming up. Jack nodded, checking his weapon one final time. Whatever waited at that abandoned airfield, salvation or ambush, the Iron Guardians would face it together. The way they'd faced everything since Grenada. Sophie must have sensed his tension. Her small hand found his squeezing with surprising strength. It's going to be okay, she whispered. Role reversed, the child now comforting the adult. Mommy always said that truth is like water. It finds a way through no matter how many rocks try to block it. Jack squeezed her hand in return, hoping Diana Lawson had been right, hoping the truth would be enough to stand against Harrison's money, his power, his influence, hoping they weren't driving straight into the jaws of a trap that would separate Sophie from the only people left in the world who believed her. Turner's Bronco slowed, turning onto a narrow access road marked only by a faded sign, Chandler Municipal Airfield, closed to public. The truck followed, headlights illuminating a chain-link fence topped with rusted barbed wire, a gate hanging open on broken hinges. Ghost in position? The radio crackled softly. No other vehicles visible. Single structure ahead, looks like an old control tower. One light on second floor. Jack acknowledged with a tap of his transmitter. Eyes open, everyone. Doc, you stay with Sophie and Mama in the truck until I give the all clear. The vehicles rolled to a stop in what had once been a parking area, now cracked asphalt being reclaimed by desert vegetation. Turner stepped out of his Bronco looking tense but determined. Jack exited the truck with Beast and Hammer flanking him. The night was silent except for the tick of cooling engines and the distant cry of a coyote. Where's your contact? Jack asked as Turner approached. Should be here, Turner replied, checking his watch. She said midnight inside the tower. Jack studied the abandoned control tower. A perfect sniper's nest with clear lines of sight in all directions. His instincts screamed caution. Beast, Hammer, secure the perimeter. I'll go in with Turner. Ghost, you maintain overwatch. Copy that. Ghost's voice came through the radio. Jack turned to Turner. After you. The reporter led the way toward the tower, Jack following a few paces behind, scanning continuously for threats. The door at the base of the tower hung askew on rusted hinges. Turner pulled it open with a protesting squeal of metal. Up here, a woman's voice called from above. Second floor. Jack's hand moved to his concealed weapon ready, but not drawing yet. He nodded to Turner, who began ascending the metal stairs that spiraled up the inside of the tower. Jack followed, staying close to the wall, minimizing his profile as a target. The second floor was a single room, once filled with radar equipment and communications gear, now stripped to bare walls and floor. A battery-powered lantern cast harsh shadows. Beside it stood a woman in her 40s, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing civilian clothes but with the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement. Agent Reyes, Turner said, thanks for meeting us. The woman nodded, her eyes locked on Jack. Mr. Blackwood, you've caused quite a stir in federal law enforcement circles today. Jack remained near the top of the stairs, maintaining his exit route. Not by choice. Rarely is, Agent Reyes replied. Her gaze shifted to Turner. You said you have evidence regarding Robert Harrison. Something that contradicts the official narrative. Turner nodded, pulling the tablet from his messenger to him. Everything's here. Financial records showing Harrison selling classified surveillance technology to foreign entities. Internal memos about bypassing security protocols. Testimonials from former employees about ethical concerns. Reyes took the tablet, scrolling through the documents with practiced efficiency. Her expression remained neutral, but Jack caught the slight widening of her eyes at certain points. "And the girl?" she asked, looking up. "Where does she fit into this?" "Her mother discovered the program," Jack explained. "Diana Lawson. She was gathering evidence when she died suddenly. Officially heart failure. The girl believes otherwise." "Believes," Reyes repeated, emphasizing the word. "Or knows. She has her mother's final evidence," Jack said. "A thumb drive with the actual code for the Phoenix Protocol, including the backdoors Harrison built in. Proves he was deliberately compromising national security for profit." Reyes set down the tablet, her expression troubled. "These are serious allegations. If true, they constitute treason." "They're true," Turner insisted. "Diana Lawson died for them. And her daughter's next if Harrison gets his hands on her." Reyes was quiet for a long moment, seemingly weighing her options. "The warrants for your arrest are real," she finally said, looking at Jack. "They'll be executed at dawn. Every law enforcement agency in Arizona will be looking for you and the girl." "And Harrison walks away clean," Jack said bitterly. "Not necessarily," Reyes countered. "These documents, they're compelling. Enough to open an investigation, but I need the source code, the proof that the backdoors were deliberate, not just bugs or oversights." Jack studied her, trying to gauge her sincerity. "And if we provide that, then I take it up the chain, to people Harrison can't reach." Her expression hardened. "But I need to see the girl, hear her story firsthand, and I need that thumb drive." Jack's radio crackled. "Ghost to Sarge. We got company. Black SUVs approaching from the South Access Road. Looks like government issue." Jack's blood ran cold. "How many?" "3 vehicles, multiple occupants." Reyes's head snapped up, alarm crossing her features. "I didn't tell anyone about this meeting." "No one." "Turner," Jack demanded. The reporter shook his head vehemently. "Nobody, I swear." Which left only one possibility. They'd been tracked. Perhaps Turner's Bronco or their borrowed truck. Or perhaps Harrison's reach extended even further than they'd imagined. "We need to move now," Jack said, already heading for the stairs. Reyes grabbed his arm. "Wait, they might not be hostile. Could be FBI backup." "You called them?" Jack asked sharply. "No, but..." "Then they're not backup," Jack cut her off. "Harrison found us. Question is, are you with him or against him?" Reyes' expression hardened. "I've spent 15 years bringing down criminals who think they're above the law. I'm not about to start working for one now." Jack made his decision. "Then come with us. Bring the evidence. Help us keep Sophie safe until we can get this to people who can actually do something about it." The sound of vehicles approaching cut through the night. No sirens, no lights. Not standard procedure for law enforcement. Jack's suspicions deepened. "Make your choice, agent," he said, "but make it now." Reyes grabbed the tablet, shoving it into her jacket. "Lead the way." They descended the stairs, rapidly emerging into the cool desert night, just as the first vehicle rounded the corner of the airfield. Steel Brotherhood, A Child's Trust. Part 3, Truth and Justice. Time slowed to a crawl as Jack Blackwood assessed their rapidly deteriorating situation. The abandoned airfield offered little cover, just the control tower behind them, a couple of dilapidated hangars 100 yards away, and the vehicles they'd arrived in. 3 black SUVs approached from the access road, cutting off their most obvious escape route. "Beast Hammer, defensive positions," Jack ordered through his radio. "Ghost, what's our back door looking like?" "Clear for now," Ghost responded. "Old service road to the north might be passable. Dirt track overgrown. Doc, get Sophie and Mama to the truck. Be ready to move on my signal." Jack turned to Agent Reyes. "Still think they're friendly?" She shook her head, eyes narrowed as she watched the approaching vehicles. "Federal agents would identify themselves. Announce their presence." Her hand moved beneath her jacket, emerging with a Glock 19. "Standard issue, 15 in the mag, 1 in the chamber." Jack nodded his appreciation. An armed federal agent on their side changed the equation significantly. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Crossing this line means there's no going back." Reyes' expression hardened. "I swore an oath to the Constitution, not to Robert Harrison." The lead SUV skidded to a halt 30 yards away. Doors opened simultaneously, men in tactical gear, emerging weapons drawn, not standard FBI procedure. These were private contractors, Harrison's personal army. "Federal agents," a voice called out. "On the ground, hands behind your heads." Reyes snorted. Bullshit. No identification, no proper procedure. Jack caught Turner's eye. When the shooting starts, stay low, head for the north side of the tower. Ghost will cover you. Turner nodded, face pale but determined. Blackwood, the voice called again. We have the building surrounded. Surrender the girl and the evidence, and no one gets hurt. Jack almost laughed at the absurdity of the promise, as if Harrison would leave witnesses to his crimes. Ghost, Jack said into his radio. On my mark, light 'em up. Aim for the engines. Create a diversion. He turned to Beast and Hammer. When Ghost fires, we move to the hangars. Draw their attention away from the truck. Copy that, came the unanimous response. Jack took a deep breath, centering himself the way he had before countless combat operations. 3, 2, 1, mark. Ghost's rifle cracked from his hidden position, the shot punching through the engine block of the lead SUV. Before the echo faded, he fired twice more in rapid succession, disabling the other vehicles. Immediately the night erupted in gunfire as Harrison's men returned fire searching for the unseen sniper. Jack, Beast, and Hammer sprinted toward the hangars, firing as they moved, forcing the attackers to divide their attention. Reyes ran with them, her movements revealing professional training as she maintained cover while returning accurate fire. Dock now, Jack ordered through his radio. North Service Road will rendezvous at Checkpoint Charlie. From the corner of his eye, he saw the truck's engine start headlights, still dark as it began rolling toward the overgrown track Ghost had identified. Turner followed Jack's earlier instructions, keeping low as he made his way around the tower toward the same exit. Jack and his team reached the first hangar, taking cover behind its corrugated metal wall. Bullets pinged off the structure, but the old aviation aluminum held. Hammer peered around the edge, assessing the enemy's position. 8, maybe 10 guys, he reported, spreading out trying to flank us. They don't know about the north exit, Jack said. We hold them here long enough for Doc to get Sophie clear, then we fade back to the service road ourselves. Beast grunted, checking his ammunition. Like Grenada, that village with the Cuban advisors. Jack nodded. Another last stand against superior numbers. Another fight they weren't supposed to win. Reyes looked between them, recognizing the shorthand of men who'd fought together. I count 4 of us against 10 of them, not great odds. We've had worse, Hammer said with a grim smile. Sarge once held off 20 Sandinistas with nothing but an M16 and a bad attitude. A bullet tore through the thin metal wall, inches from Jack's head. Less reminiscing, more shooting, he ordered. They settled into a defensive rhythm, taking turns providing cover fire to keep Harrison's men pinned down. Jack kept one ear on the radio, waiting for confirmation that Sophie was safely away. Long minutes passed in a cacophony of gunfire and shouted orders. Finally, the radio crackled. Doc to Sarge, package secure. We're clear of the hot zone. A weight lifted from Jack's chest. Sophie was safe, for now. Ghost, what's your status? Jack asked. Still in position, but they're starting to zero in on me. Need to relocate soon. Do it, Jack ordered. Link up with Doc at the checkpoint. Roger that, watch your 6. Jack turned to the others. Time to go. Ghost is pulling back. Doc's got Sophie clear. We retreat in stages, covering each other. They began their withdrawal, Hammer moving, first while the others provided covering fire, then Beast, then Reyes. Jack would go last, the commander making sure his people got out. As Reyes prepared to make her run to the next position, a sudden barrage of gunfire erupted from their flank. One of Harrison's men had worked his way around the hangar. Reyes cried out, clutching her shoulder as she fell. Jack dispatched the attacker with 2 precise shots, then rushed to Reyes' side. Blood seeped between her fingers where she pressed against the wound. How bad? He asked, already reaching for the first aid kit in his pocket. Through and through, she gritted out. Nothing vital, but I can't run like this. Jack made a quick field dressing, wrapping the wound tight to slow the bleeding. Beast, we need to carry her out. Beast nodded, holstering his weapon and lifting Reyes as if she weighed nothing. Got her. Let's move. They continued their retreat, with Hammer and Jack now providing all the cover fire. The gunshots had diminished, Harrison's men regrouping, probably calling for reinforcements. The momentary lull was the opening they needed. They reached the service road, finding Ghost waiting with the Impala's engine running. Truck's 5 minutes ahead of us, he reported. No pursuit yet. Jack helped Beast load Reyes into the back seat. Turner, make it out. Ghost nodded. Saw him clear the fence to the east, smart guy moving away from both groups. Let's hope he's smart enough to make the rendezvous, Jack said, climbing into the passenger's seat while Beast and Hammer squeezed in with Reyes. Head for checkpoint, Charlie. Quick but quiet. No lights until we hit the main road. Ghost eased the car down the overgrown track branches, scraping against the windows as they navigated away from the airfield. In the distance, they could hear sirens. real law enforcement responding to reports of gunfire. Those weren't feds back there, Reyes said through clenched teeth, the pain of her wound evident in her voice. Harrison's private security, ex-military contractors. Figured as much, Jack replied. Real agents don't shoot first and ask questions never. This is bigger than I thought, Reyes admitted. Harrison must have serious pull to deploy a team like that. Off the books, no accountability. Jack's expression darkened. The Phoenix Protocol isn't just about selling tech to the highest bidder. It's about power, control, the kind of surveillance state that makes democracy impossible. Reyes nodded grimly. And with his new position on the National Security Council, he'll have access to resources that make that team look like mall cops. They rode in tense silence for several miles, ghost navigating back roads and side streets, avoiding main thoroughfares where roadblocks might already be established. Eventually, they turned onto a dirt road leading deep into the desert, following the truck's tracks through the sandy soil. Checkpoint. Charlie was an old mining claim, 30 miles outside Phoenix, abandoned decades ago, but maintained as a safe house by the Iron Guardians. A small cabin, a shed that had once housed mining equipment, and a natural spring that provided water even in the driest seasons. The perfect place to disappear, if you knew it existed. The truck was parked behind the cabin, hidden from aerial observation by a canopy of mesquite trees. Doc emerged as they pulled up medical bag already in hand. Sophie stood in the doorway, her small figure silhouetted against the warm light inside. We got company, Doc asked, eyeing Rhea's wound. FBI, Jack explained. The real kind. Took a round covering our retreat. Doc nodded, helping Beast carry Reyes into the cabin. Sophia, honey, I need you to get my blue case from the truck. The one with the red cross. Sophie darted out, determination written across her face. She returned moments later with Doc's medical kit, watching intently as he began treating Reyes more thoroughly. Will she be okay? Sophie asked, concern evident in her voice. She'll be fine, Doc assured her. Bullet went through clean. No major vessels or bones hit. She's lucky. Skilled, Reyes corrected through gritted teeth. I saw it coming, turned to minimize the damage. Not my first gunfight. Sophie's eyes widened, slightly impressed. Jack could see her cataloging this. Another strong woman like her mother. A role model in a world where such figures were desperately needed. As Doc worked, Jack gathered the others for a strategy session. Harrison's escalating. Those weren't just hired guns. They were a professional hit team. And they knew exactly where to find us, Hammer added, which means either we're compromised or Turner is. Or my phone was tapped, Reyes suggested from where Doc was stitching her wound. Bureau protocols would have prevented it, but if Harrison has the pull, we think he does. Jack nodded, considering the possibilities. Either way, we're running out of time and options. Harrison will have every road out of Arizona watched by morning. What about the evidence? Ghost asked. The thumb drive Turner's research. Reyes fumbled in her pocket with her good arm, producing both the tablet Turner had given her and a small voice recorder. I got Turner's files here, and I recorded our conversation at the tower, him laying out the case against Harrison, me agreeing to help. Proves I wasn't coerced. Smart, Jack acknowledged, but we still need that thumb drive to make the case airtight. All eyes turned to Sophie, who had been listening quietly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the thumb drive, still wrapped in its pink hair ribbon. I've been carrying it, she said simply. Mommy said never to let it out of my sight. Jack felt a surge of pride. 10 years old and already demonstrating more presence of mind than many adults he'd served with. Good girl, he said softly. Now we just need to get all this to someone who can use it. Someone Harrison can't touch. My section chief, Reyes suggested. James Cortez, old school FBI incorruptible. He'd open an official investigation, assign a task force, do it by the book. Can you reach him securely? Jack asked. Reyes grimaced as Doc tied off another stitch. Not from here. Need a secure line bureau encryption. And we'd need to get to him physically with the evidence. He's in the D.C. field office. That's 2,000 miles away, Hammer pointed out, with every cop and Fed in the Southwest looking for us. Silence fell as the enormity of their challenge sank in. The evidence they had could bring down one of the most powerful men in the country, but only if they could get it to the right people. And Harrison would use every resource at his disposal to stop them. The cabin door burst open, startling everyone. Weapons were drawn and aimed before they registered who stood in the doorway. Mike Turner, disheveled but very much alive. Made it, he gasped, bending over to catch his breath. Got away clean, followed your backup directions, then saw the lights here. Jack lowered his pistol, Any sign of pursuit? Turner shook his head. Roads are crawling with police, but they're looking for bikers and a kid. I'm just a journalist with car trouble as far as they know. He collapsed into a chair, accepting the canteen Beast offered him. So what's the plan? We're in deep shit now. Jack looked around the room, at his fellow guardians, at Agent Reyes, with her bandaged shoulder, at Mike Turner, and finally at Sophie. So much risk, so much sacrifice, all to protect one child and expose one corrupt man. The odds were stacked against them in every conceivable way. But Jack Blackwood hadn't survived Grenada by accepting poor odds. We split up, he decided. Multiple targets, multiple routes, harder to track. He turned to Reyes. You and Turner take the evidence to your section chief. FBI credentials might get you through roadblocks. Sophie stays with me and the Guardians. We'll create a diversion, draw Harrison's attention away from you. Reyes frowned. Sophie's testimony is crucial. Without her, it's just documents that Harrison could claim were fabricated. I can record her statement now, Turner suggested, pulling out a small digital recorder. Get everything on the record before we separate. Jack considered this, then looked at Sophie. What do you think, kiddo, up for telling your story one more time? Sophie nodded, solemn but determined. I can do it. For the next hour, Sophie sat with Turner and Reyes, carefully recounting everything she knew. Her mother's discovery of the Phoenix Protocol, Harrison's strange behavior before and after Diana's death, the hidden thumb drive, her desperate flight from her stepfather. Her voice never wavered, even when describing the most frightening moments. Jack listened with growing admiration for this child's courage. When she finished, Turner stopped the recorder. That's it. Her testimony, the source code, my research, your statement, he said to Reyes. Enough to bury Harrison 10 times over. If it reaches the right people, Jack reminded them. Reyes nodded grimly. Cortez will know what to do with it, how to protect it from being buried. Then that's the mission, Jack said. Get the evidence to Cortez. Everything else is secondary. Ghost, who had been keeping watch outside, entered the cabin. Vehicle approaching, still distant, but headed this way. Tension immediately filled the room. Harrison's men couldn't have tracked them here. The location wasn't on any map known only to the Guardians. Could be coincidence, Beast suggested. Prospector Hiker. At 3 in the morning, Hammer countered. Not likely. Jack made a quick decision. We move now. Ghost, take Reyes and Turner in the Impala. Doc, you drive the truck with Sophie, Mama, and Beast. Hammer, you're with me on the bikes. Ghost had retrieved their motorcycles from the compound before it was compromised, hiding them in the shed behind the cabin. Insurance against exactly this kind of situation. What's the play, Sarge? Hammer asked as they prepared to depart. Divide and conquer, Jack replied. Ghost takes Reyes and Turner east toward New Mexico. They've got the best chance of getting through with her credentials. Doc takes Sophie and the others north toward the Grand Canyon. Remote routes, less law enforcement presence. You and I go west, make a lot of noise, draw attention away from both groups. A classic military tactic. Sacrifice the few to protect the many. In this case, Jack and Hammer would be the decoys, the targets. Harrison's men would focus on, while the others escaped with Sophie and the evidence. Classic Blackwood, Hammer said with a grim smile, heading straight into the teeth of the enemy. Would you have it any other way? Jack asked. Hell no, Hammer replied. Just like old times. They moved with practiced efficiency, loading vehicles, distributing weapons and supplies, establishing communication protocols. In 15 minutes, they were ready to move out. Jack found Sophie by the truck, her backpack clutched to her chest. He knelt down to eye level with her. You stick with Doc and Mama, he instructed. Do exactly what they tell you. They'll keep you safe until this is over. Sophie's eyes, too old for her face, studied him intently. You're not coming with us. It wasn't a question. The child had already figured out the strategy, understood the sacrifice it entailed. I need to make sure Harrison's men follow me, not you, Jack explained gently. It's the best way to protect you and the evidence. Sophie's lower lip trembled slightly. The first real sign of childlike vulnerability he'd seen from her. But what if they catch you? Jack smiled reassuringly. They won't. I've been out running trouble since before you were born. Sophie didn't look convinced. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small object, a tarnished silver compass. This was Mommy's. She said it always helps you find your way home when you're lost. She pressed it into Jack's hand. I want you to have it, so you can find us when it's over. Jack's throat tightened unexpectedly. He closed his fingers around the compass, feeling its weight, physical and emotional. I'll bring it back to you. That's a promise. Sophie nodded. then did something that caught him completely off guard. She threw her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. Jack froze for a moment, then gently returned the embrace, feeling something crack open inside him, a part of his heart he'd walled off years ago. "Be careful," Sophie whispered before releasing him. "You too, kiddo," Jack replied, his voice rougher than usual. The mysterious vehicle was closer now, its headlights visible in the distance, bouncing along the rough desert road. Time had run out. "Move out," Jack ordered. "Stick to the plan. Rendezvous at the fallback location in 3 days if all goes well." Ghost's Impala pulled away, first lights off, heading east along a barely visible trail. Doc followed in the truck, taking a game trail that led north through a narrow canyon. Jack and Hammer mounted their Harleys, the familiar rumble of American V-twins breaking the desert silence. "Ready to raise some hell?" Hammer asked, gunning his engine. Jack smiled grimly, Diana's compass secure in his pocket. "Always." They roared away from the cabin, heading west toward the main highway, making no attempt to disguise their presence. The bait in the trap, the sacrifice play. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Jack Blackwood rode into what might be his final battle. Not for country this time, but for something more personal, a promise to a little girl with brave eyes and her mother's silver compass. The sun climbed higher as Jack and Hammer raced along Route 60, their Harleys pushing 90 on the empty desert highway. They'd stop once at a gas station, making sure to be seen to be remembered, creating breadcrumbs for Harrison's men to follow. "Company," Hammer called out, glancing in his mirror. "Black SUV coming up fast." Jack checked his own mirror. The vehicle was still distant, but closing rapidly. Could be ordinary travelers in a hurry, could be Harrison's men. Either way, they'd stick to the plan. "Next exit," Jack ordered. "We separate. You head north, I'll go south. Meet up at Waypoint Delta at sundown." Hammer nodded. They'd rehearsed this maneuver countless times over the years. Divide the pursuit, increase the chances at least one of them would escape. At the exit, they split. Jack watched in his mirror as the SUV followed him, ignoring Hammer. Confirmation, if he needed it, that he was the primary target. Harrison wanted the leader, one who'd started this whole chain of events by sheltering Sophie at the diner. Jack gunned the engine, pushing the Harley to its limits. The SUV kept pace, gaining gradually on the straighter stretches of highway. These weren't local cops. They drove with the precision and determination of professionals. He led them on a chase through increasingly remote terrain, dirt roads and dry washes, using the motorcycle's superior maneuverability to maintain distance. His destination was a place he knew well, an abandoned quarry where the Guardians sometimes held target practice. Terrain that favored a single defender against multiple attackers. A good place for a last stand if it came to that. The quarry appeared ahead, its limestone walls gleaming white in the midday sun. Jack navigated the winding access road, the SUV still in pursuit but falling behind on the tighter turns. At the bottom of the quarry, he dismounted, pushing the bike behind a pile of rubble, then took up position on a ledge 20 feet up the quarry wall. Minutes later, the SUV pulled into the quarry floor. 3 men emerged, weapons drawn. Not the tactical team from the airfield. These men wore suits, moved with the coordinated precision of government agents. Real ones this time. "Blackwood," one called out. "Federal agents, come out with your hands up." Jack remained silent, watching through his rifle scope as they spread out, searching methodically. They were good, maintaining cover, watching each other's blind spots. This wouldn't be easy. His radio crackled softly. "Ghost to Sarge. You copy." Jack keyed his mic, keeping his voice low. "Copy. Situation. Package delivered." Ghost reported. "Reyes made contact with their chief. Evidence is in secure hands. They're moving on it now." Relief flooded through Jack. The mission was accomplished. Sophie's testimony, Diana's evidence, Turner's research. All in the hands of people who could use it. People Harrison couldn't control. "Sophie," he asked. "Safe at the Canyon house with Doc and Mama. Beast is running perimeter. All quiet so far." "Hammer linked up with me an hour ago. We're 20 miles north of your position, ready to provide backup if needed." Jack considered his options. The agents below were still searching, working their way methodically around the quarry floor. He could engage them, try to fight his way out. Or stand down, he decided. Mission accomplished. No need for further casualties. Sarge, Ghost sounded confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's over. We won. Harrison's going down. No need to spill more blood." Silence on the radio, then. "Understood. What's your play?" Jack took a deep breath. "I'm going to surrender. Buy you time to get Sophie somewhere safe. somewhere Harrison can't reach her, even if he somehow wiggles out of this. Negative, Ghost protested. We don't leave our own behind, Iron Guardian's code. Not leaving me behind, Jack corrected. Completing the mission. Sophie's safety is all that matters now. Before Ghost could argue further, Jack made his decision. He safed his weapon, set it aside, and stood up. Federal agents, he called out. I'm coming out, unarmed. The agents below immediately took cover, weapons trained on his position. Jack raised his hands, keeping them clearly visible as he made his way down from the ledge. On your knees, the lead agent ordered as Jack reached the quarry floor. Hands behind your head. Jack complied, feeling the rough gravel through his jeans. The agents approached cautiously, one covering, while another moved in to apply handcuffs. Jack Blackwood, the lead agent, said, you're under arrest for kidnapping, assault, obstruction of justice. Save it, Jack interrupted. I know my rights, and I know Robert Harrison's corrupt empire is crashing down around his ears right about now. The agent's expression flickered, surprise quickly masked. We're just following orders. Bringing you in. To who, Jack asked. Harrison or legitimate federal authorities? Uncertainty crossed the agent's face. We're taking you to the Phoenix field office. That's all I know. Jack allowed himself a small smile as they led him to the SUV. If they were heading to the legitimate FBI field office rather than some black site of Harrison's choosing, then Reyes had indeed succeeded. The wheels of justice were turning. Slowly perhaps, but turning nonetheless. As they drove away from the quarry, Jack fingered the silver compass in his pocket. Sophie's compass, a reminder of the promise he'd made to find his way back to her when this was over. One way or another, he intended to keep that promise. The Phoenix FBI field office was a modern glass and steel structure in the heart of downtown. Jack was processed through security, his personal belongings cataloged and stored, his biometrics recorded. Standard procedure for federal arrests. No sign of Harrison's influence so far. They placed him in an interview room, not an interrogation cell, he noted. Another positive sign, he'd been in enough of both to know the difference. After an hour of waiting, the door opened. A man in his 50s entered, salt and pepper hair, the weathered face of someone who'd spent his career fighting uphill battles, and eyes that had seen too much corruption to be easily fooled. Mr. Blackwood, he said, taking the seat across from Jack. I'm Section Chief James Cortez. I believe you've met my agent, Teresa Reyes. Jack studied the man, looking for signs of deception. Where is she? Safe, Cortez assured him, recovering from her wound. She's told me quite a story about you and your friends. About Robert Harrison and the Phoenix Protocol. And Jack asked, giving nothing away. Cortez leaned forward. And I've spent the last 4 hours reviewing evidence that suggests one of the most powerful men in Washington is a traitor to his country. Evidence that you helped bring to light. The girl, Jack asked, his primary concern evident. In protective custody, Cortez said, along with your friends. They surrendered voluntarily once they heard you were in our custody. Insisted on staying with the child. Relief washed through Jack. The Iron Guardians had followed protocol, protecting Sophie above all else. Harrison, he asked. Being questioned as we speak, Cortez replied, satisfaction evident in his tone. By agents from our Public Corruption Unit, the Inspector General's Office, and National Security. His appointment to the NSC has been suspended pending investigation. Jack nodded slowly. It was really happening. The wheels of justice, so often jammed when the powerful were involved, were turning smoothly for once. What happens now, he asked. Cortez sighed. That's complicated. Technically, you and your friends committed numerous felonies. Kidnapping, assault, evading arrest. To protect a child, Jack pointed out. To expose corruption at the highest levels of government. I'm aware, Cortez acknowledged, and that will certainly factor into how this proceeds. But I can't simply let you walk away. You understand that? Jack did understand. Even justified actions had consequences. He'd known that when he made the decision to help Sophie at the diner, known it when he chose to surrender at the quarry. I don't care what happens to me, he said honestly. Just make sure Sophie's taken care of. She's lost everything. Her mother, her home, her sense of security. She deserves better. Cortez studied him thoughtfully. You care about her. Beyond the mission, beyond the evidence. You care about the child herself. Jack didn't deny it. She's brave, smart, been through more than any kid should have to face. Reminds me of... He trailed off, unwilling to voice the comparison. The daughter you never had, Cortez suggested gently. Jack looked up surprised. I read your file, Cortez explained. Ranger decorated combat veteran. Lost your family, wife unborn child, in a car accident while you were deployed, never remarried. Old wounds still tender after all these years. Jack pushed the memories aside. What happens to Sophie now, he asked, refocusing on the present. That depends partly on you, Cortez said. She refuses to talk to our child psychologists, says she'll only speak to Sarge and his friends, says you promised to come back to her. The compass in processing, the promise to return it. Jack felt a tightness in his chest. I'd like to see her, he said simply. Cortez nodded. I thought you might. There's still a lot to sort out legally, but I think we can arrange that. 3 days later, Jack sat in a different room at the FBI field office. No handcuffs this time. His status had been upgraded from suspect in custody to material witness, a legal fiction that gave Cortez flexibility while the larger case against Harrison developed. The door opened and Sophie burst in, flying across the room and into his arms with such force that Jack nearly toppled backwards in his chair. You came back, she exclaimed, her small arms wrapped around his neck in a fierce hug. Promised I would, didn't I? Jack replied, his voice gruff with emotion. Over Sophie's shoulder, he saw Mama Thompson, Doc, and the rest of the Guardians file into the room, all looking tired but relieved. Sophie pulled back, studying his face with those two old eyes. Are you in trouble? The agents wouldn't tell me anything. Jack smiled reassuringly. Nothing I can't handle. He's being modest, Cortez said, entering behind the Guardians. Mr. Blackwood and his friends have provided crucial testimony that's blown open one of the biggest corruption cases in Bureau history. Robert Harrison is facing multiple federal charges, including treason. So he can't hurt anyone else? Sophie asked Hope, and wariness mingled in her expression. Not anymore, Cortez confirmed. We've seized his assets, revoked his security clearances, and placed him under house arrest pending trial. The Phoenix Protocol has been shut down, and a full congressional inquiry is being launched into how it was approved in the first place. Jack watched Sophie absorb this information, saw the exact moment when she realized it was really over. The tension she'd carried in her small shoulders since the moment she'd crawled under his table at the diner finally eased. What happens now? She asked, unconsciously echoing Jack's question from days earlier. Cortez glanced at Jack before answering. Well, that's partly why I wanted everyone here today. There's the matter of your guardianship to settle. Sophie's expression fell. Do I have to go to foster care? Not necessarily, Cortez said. Your mother's will named a godfather, someone she trusted to care for you if anything happened to her. Sophie looked confused. Who? Mike Turner, Cortez said. Your Uncle Mike. He's expressed his willingness to take responsibility for you if that's what you want. Sophie considered this, her brow furrowed in concentration. I like Uncle Mike, she said slowly. But her eyes drifted to Jack and the Guardians. The unspoken sentiment hung in the air. These were the people who had risked everything to protect her, who had believed her when no one else would, who had become in a few short, intense days the closest thing to family she had left. Cortez, perceptive as ever, caught the look. There might be another option, assuming certain legal issues can be resolved and with proper oversight and support services. He turned to Jack. Mr. Blackwood, would you be willing to serve as Sophie's foster parent with the possibility of permanent guardianship or even adoption down the road? The room went silent. Jack stared at Cortez, wondering if he'd heard correctly. Him a foster parent? After all he'd done, all the laws he'd broken. I'm not exactly father material, he said hesitantly. Ex-Ranger Motorcycle Club leader recently arrested, and the man who put everything on the line to protect a child who needed help, Cortez countered. That counts for something in my book. Jack looked at Sophie, saw the hope blooming in her eyes. What do you think, kiddo? You want an old warhorse like me looking after you? Sophie's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Yes, she said simply. More than anything. Jack felt something shift inside him, the final walls around his heart crumbling away. He'd lost a family once, thought he'd never have another. Never allowed himself to even consider the possibility. But sometimes life surprised you. Sometimes when you least expected it, you found yourself making room for someone else in your carefully constructed solitude. There'd be conditions, Cortez warned. Regular check-ins with child services, stable housing, proper schooling. And your friends, he gestured to the Guardians, would need to keep their more colorful activities away from the child. Beast chuckled. Hell, Chief, we were already planning to turn the compound into something respectable. Maybe open that motorcycle repair school we've been talking about. Language, Mama Thompson scolded, glancing at Sophie. Jack looked around at his brothers. The men who had followed him through war and peace, who had stood with him to protect a child they'd never met before. Then it's Sophie, who watched him with those intelligent eyes waiting for his answer. "I'd like to try," he said finally, "if Sophie wants me to." Sophie's response was another fierce hug that has said more than words ever could. 6 months later, Jack stood at the edge of the Iron Guardian's property, watching the sunset paint the Arizona desert in shades of gold and crimson. The compound had undergone a transformation. New fencing without the razor wire fresh paint on the building's proper signage, announcing Iron Guardian's motorcycle repair, school and community center. Inside the main building, Sophie was finishing her homework under Mama Thompson's watchful eye. She'd settled into her new life with remarkable resilience, making friends at the local school, excelling in her studies, especially mathematics and computer science, her mother's fields. The nightmares had grown less frequent, though they hadn't disappeared entirely. Some wounds took time to heal. Robert Harrison's trial was scheduled for next month. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Diana's files, Turner's research, Sophie's testimony, and most damning of all, the confessions of Harrison's associates who had turned state's evidence to save themselves. The Phoenix Protocol had been dismantled, its architects scattered or imprisoned. The system had worked for once. Jack fingered the silver compass that he now kept with him always. Sophie had insisted he keep it, saying he might still need help finding his way sometimes. Wise beyond her years, that one. The sound of motorcycles approaching drew his attention. The rest of the Guardians, returning from a ride, their bikes gleaming in the dying light. They pulled up beside him, engines rumbling to silence. "How'd she do on that math test?" Hammer asked as he dismounted. 98%, Jack replied, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "Teacher says she could skip a grade if she wanted to." "That's our girl," Beast said, grinning. "Smart as a whip, just like her mama." Doc clapped Jack on the shoulder. "You doing all right with all this? Sarge Parenthood's a different kind of battlefield." Jack nodded slowly. "Getting there, one day at a time." Ghost quiet as ever studied him with knowing eyes. "Never thought I'd see the day. Jack Blackwood, domestic as a house cat." Jack laughed. "Wouldn't go that far." They walked together toward the main building. These men who had faced death side by side and now faced something equally challenging, building a future worth having, a community worth protecting. Through the window, Jack could see Sophie at the kitchen table, her head bent over her books. Mama Thompson setting places for dinner. A scene of ordinary domesticity that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Sophie looked up, spotted him through the window and waved. Jack waved back, feeling that now familiar warmth in his chest. Not a replacement for what he'd lost all those years ago. Nothing could ever replace that. But something new, something unexpected and precious. He'd gone from soldier to outlaw to guardian in the span of a lifetime. Had fought wars both foreign and domestic. Had seen the worst humanity had to offer and occasionally the best. But nothing had prepared him for this, for the fierce protective love he felt for this brave child who had crawled under his table and changed everything. Sophie had asked him once in those early days why he and the Guardians had helped her when no one else would. Why they had risked everything for a little girl they didn't even know. Jack had thought about it for a long time before answering. "Because sometimes that's all it takes," he'd said finally. "One person willing to stand up when everyone else sits down. One person. One child. One choice that changed everything." As Jack Blackwood stepped into the warm light of home, a concept he was still getting used to, he realized that for all his battles, all his scars, all his years of searching, he'd finally found what he'd been looking for all along. A purpose greater than himself. A family forged not in blood, but in courage. And the simple, profound truth that even in the darkest times, people could still find each other. The brave ones, the ones who refused to look away, the ones who understood that protecting the innocent wasn't just a duty. It was the only thing that really mattered.